to say we've never had so many complaints about a guest.
A lot of you get in touch today and they said, "We don't like that Cesar."
Cesar Milan has become famous as the dog whisperer, the man who can tame the most untrainable dogs. But now he's being sued, accused of having a pit bull that bit humans and even killed Queen Latifah's dog.
Cesar Milan, the famous dog whisperer, shocked everyone when he collapsed in court after hearing his sentence. Fans watched in disbelief as the man who had built an empire on training dogs seemed powerless over his own fate. For years, he was known as the ultimate expert in dog behavior, but behind the scenes, things weren't so perfect. Public criticism, personal struggles, and legal troubles had been piling up. Now, it all came crashing down in the most dramatic way. What led to this shocking moment? And what happens next? Join us as we uncover the full story. The dog whisperer faces legal battles. For years, Cesar Milan was the king of dog training. He was the dog whisperer, the man who could turn even the most aggressive dogs into calm, obedient pets. Millions of fans adored him, and his methods became legendary. But not everyone was impressed. Animal rights activists and modern dog trainers began to criticize his techniques, calling them outdated and even harmful. As the world of dog training evolved, Milan found himself constantly defending his reputation. The pressure to stay on top while adapting to new standards took a serious toll on him. Then came the legal battles. It all started in 2006 when a television producer sued Milan, claiming his dog was choked and forced to run on a treadmill at Milan's Dog Psychology Center. That was just the beginning of all his legal battles. What exactly led to the fall of the once mighty dog whisperer? And was this the only legal battle he faced? Stay tuned to find out. In 2015, another lawsuit was filed against Milan. A Florida nurse sued him after being attacked by a dog that had recently been released from Milan's facility. The pattern was clear. Dogs trained under Milan's methods were now at the center of serious allegations, but perhaps the most shocking case came in 2021. Gymnast Lydia Matisse sued Milan for $850,000, claiming his dog, Junior, had attacked her years earlier. The lawsuit also included an unexpected twist. Matisse claimed Junior had previously killed Queen Latifah's dog. She argued that Milan should have known Junior was dangerous. Milan, of course, denied the claims.
Milan and Queen Latifah for comment were unanswered. In court documents, Milan has denied all of Ms. Mattis's allegations.
Eventually, the lawsuit was settled out of court, but the damage to his reputation was undeniable. By the time Milan stepped into court for his latest legal battle, the weight of it all was impossible to ignore. Years of controversy, criticism, and legal troubles had been building up. This wasn't just about a lawsuit, it was about his entire identity. The man who could control any dog now seemed unable to control his own fate. But before he started facing all these problems, how did Cesar Milan become so famous? Cesar Milan's life is often seen as a classic rags-to-riches story. A young man from Mexico chasing the American dream, and while that's partly true, his journey was anything but simple. He became famous as the dog whisperer, but his life off camera has been filled with challenges, struggles, and unexpected turns. Milan's love for dogs started early. Growing up on his grandfather's farm in Sinaloa, Mexico, he was always surrounded by animals, but dogs were different. He had a natural way with them, almost like they understood him without words. Wherever he went, dogs followed him. While that might sound like a dream for any dog lover, it made him the target of teasing. Kids in his town mocked him, calling him El Perrero, which roughly means dirty dog boy. But Milan didn't let the bullying change him. Instead, he held on to his dream. He wanted to become the best dog trainer in the world. By the time he was 13, he had a plan. He saw the incredible, well-trained dogs on TV shows like Lassie and Rin Tin Tin, and he knew where he needed to be: Hollywood. He believed his talents would shine there, and nothing was going to stop him. At 21, he decided to make his move. With just $100 in his pocket, he left home and headed to a bus station in Tijuana. His goal? Crossing the border into the United States, but it wasn't going to be easy. When he found a hole in the border fence, he thought he had his way in, until he was stopped and forced to pay $100 to get through. That was all the money he had. Just like that, he entered the US with nothing, no money, no friends, no home, and barely any English. It was a tough start, but Milan didn't let that stop him. His journey from an undocumented immigrant with a dream to a world-famous dog expert is incredible. So, how did the dirty dog boy from Mexico become a global phenomenon? And what happened when his empire started to shake? Keep watching to find out more. Cesar Millan's journey to fame. Cesar Millan's journey in America started in the roughest way possible. With no money, no home, and barely any English, he found himself homeless on the streets of San Diego. He slept under a freeway, surviving on convenience store hot dogs. At the time, 2 hot dogs cost 99 cents, so his goal each day was simple: find a way to make at least $1. It wasn't glamorous, but he never lost sight of his dream. Eventually, he got his first real job in the US at a dog grooming shop. He had only learned 1 sentence in English. "Do you have an application for work?" That one sentence changed everything. The shop owners were immediately impressed by his confidence, especially with large and aggressive dogs that others struggled to handle. It was clear he had a special talent. After moving to Inglewood, Milan decided to take things a step further. He started offering a group dog walking service, but with a twist. Unlike other dog walkers, he let his pack roam off-leash. It wasn't exactly legal, but it definitely caught people's attention. Soon, word spread about the Mexican guy who can walk a pack of dogs. One of his first celebrity clients was Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith, who not only hired him but also paid for him to take a year of English lessons. That investment helped Milan grow his business even faster. Before long, he had enough money to open the Dog Psychology Center in South Central Los Angeles. His ability to rehabilitate difficult dogs made him stand out, and in 2002, the LA Times ran a story about him. That article changed his life. Suddenly, TV producers were knocking on his door, eager to turn his training methods into a show. Milan soon signed on to host Dog Whisperer with Cesar Millan. While Animal Planet wasn't interested beyond a pilot episode, the National Geographic Channel took a chance, ordering 26 episodes. The show became a massive hit, making Milan a household name, but fame came with problems. In 2006, Milan found himself in legal trouble twice in 1 week. First, his former publicist and her partner sued him, claiming they had come up with the name Dog Whisperer and deserved $5 million. Then, 8 Simple Rules producer Floody Suarez sued Milan, alleging that his dog, Gator, suffered abuse at his training facility. According to Suarez, Gator was left bruised and struggling to breathe after being forced to run on a treadmill with a choke chain. Surgery was required to fix the damage, and the vet bills totaled over $25,000. Critics like pet journalist Steve Dale mocked him as the dog screamer, while British TV host Alan Titchmarsh openly called his methods cruel. This was just the beginning of his woes. 2010 was a terrible year for Cesar Millan. It all started with the heartbreaking loss of his beloved dog, Daddy. The gentle pit bull had been by his side for 16 years, not just as his assistant on Dog Whisperer, but as his best friend. Milan was devastated, but before he could even process his grief, life hit him with another blow. His wife of 16 years filed for divorce. As if losing Daddy and his marriage weren't enough, Milan then discovered something even worse. His finances were a mess. Despite being a famous TV personality, he had made bad business decisions and had very little to show for his success. Everything he had built seemed to be crumbling around him, and he felt completely lost. What other criticism did Milan face, and how did he settle his legal problems? Let's find out. Criticisms faced by William for his unconventional dog techniques. Cesar Milan's training methods have always been a hot topic. While many people admire his ability to transform aggressive dogs, others believe his techniques are too harsh. Animal rights groups, including the American Humane Society, have been some of his biggest critics. They called his methods inhumane and barbaric, even asking National Geographic to cancel his show. Their biggest concerns? His use of shock collars, pinning dogs to the ground, and tightening collars. They argued that his methods were not just outdated, but also dangerous. One particular episode stood out to them. A difficult dog was pinned to the ground by its neck after being hung by a collar that Milan gradually tightened. The American Humane Society claimed that this partially cut off the dog's blood supply. To them, this was not training. It was cruelty. They believed that showing these methods on TV gave people the wrong idea about dog training, making them think force and dominance were the best ways to control their pets. They wanted the show off the air. Milan, of course, defended himself. He insisted that he only used minimum force to correct aggressive behavior. He also reminded people that his way was not the only way, just one method among many. His fans continued to support him, arguing that his techniques worked when nothing else did. They believed he had a deep understanding of dog behavior and that his approach was misunderstood. At the same time, Milan was struggling in his personal life. By 2012, he had reached a breaking point. His beloved dog, Daddy, had passed away. His wife had filed for divorce, and his financial troubles were piling up. Everything that had given his life meaning seemed to be slipping away. The pressure became too much. In a moment of deep despair, he took a bunch of pills, hoping to end it all, but fate had other plans. His sons found him just in time and rushed him to the hospital. When he woke up, he was surrounded by fans, people who loved his show and admired his work. That moment changed everything. It made him realize he still had a purpose. He could still make a difference. Doctors offered him antidepressants, but Milan chose a different path. Instead of medication, he turned to his own philosophy, exercise, discipline, and affection. He treated himself the same way he would a troubled dog, using structure and routine to rebuild his life, and it worked. Slowly but surely, he found his way back. During this time, he also met Jahira Dar, a woman who played a big role in his recovery. With her support, he regained his confidence and started rebuilding his career. Before long, he was back on TV with new shows like Cesar 911 and The Leader of the Pack. He even teamed up with his son Calvin for Nickelodeon's Mutt and Stuff. Milan had survived the darkest chapter of his life and come out stronger. Interestingly, as time passed, even the American Humane Society softened its stance on Milan. Although they had strongly criticized him before, they later acknowledged that they shared some areas of mutual interest. It seemed that, despite their differences, both sides wanted the same thing: better lives for dogs. Cesar Milan's journey has been anything but easy. He went from being homeless to becoming one of the most famous dog trainers in the world. He faced lawsuits, harsh criticism, and even personal tragedy, but through it all, he found a way to keep moving forward. Xi Jinping's humble beginnings. Before he became one of the most powerful figures in the world, Xi Jinping went from humble beginnings in a modest, low-income Chinese household to living in a cave before he was even an adult. These experiences have greatly shaped the person and leader he has turned out to be, and it's no surprise he is so beloved by the Chinese people. Let's take a look at Xi Jinping's early childhood. Imagine growing up in the heart of Beijing, the son of a powerful revolutionary leader, only to see your world turn upside down at the age of 10. That's how life unfolded for Xi Jinping. The Chinese leader was born on June 15, 1953, to Xi Zhongxun, a great man of influence who rose through the ranks to become vice premier and a key figure in the Chinese Communist Party. But then, the political winds shifted, and that's when the Xi family began facing hard times.
Basically, he was on his own. I think his father was put under house arrest a few years before, And so he was really kind of left as almost like a political orphan.
Xi Jinping was the third child in his family, with two older sisters, Cao Cao and Anan. Their life seemed secure in Beijing, but beneath the surface, China was changing, and so too was the fate of the Xi family.
So it both hardened him, it also gave him a real sense of the ups and downs of power. And I think that's one reason why he's so ruthless himself.
In 1963, when Xi was only 10 years old, everything began to crumble. His once revered political leader father was suddenly purged from the Chinese Communist Party and was sent to work in a remote factory. Why did the party turn on one of its own? The Chinese Cultural Revolution swept through China and toppled high-ranking intellectuals, officials, and anyone who didn't align with the Communist Party's hardline ideologies. For Xi, the revolution cut short his education, as students were encouraged not to learn, but to revolt. The Xi family home was ransacked, and his sister, Xi Heping, was killed. But this was just the beginning. Soon after, Xi's father was branded as an enemy of the revolution, and then publicly denounced, imprisoned, and humiliated. His mother, under immense pressure, was forced to denounce her husband. The once prominent family was now living a nightmare. At just 15 years old, Xi had to make a huge decision that would change his life forever. Would he stay in Beijing, or would he follow the party's call to go down to the countryside? On a cold January day in 1969, took a journey that has been very crucial in keeping him modest and frugal, even after becoming a wealthy and powerful politician. That year, Xi left behind the city lights of Beijing and found himself in the harsh, rugged village of Liangjiahe in Shanxi province. Life there was brutal. The village was backward, poverty-stricken, and far removed from the life he knew. Xi was just a teenager, but he had to grapple with the challenges of rural life, fighting fleas, enduring labor, and surviving with little food. Could someone raised in Beijing adapt to this harsh new reality? Teenage years and political enlightenment. It's almost unbelievable to imagine that the president of all of China spent his teenage years living in a cave in a backwater village. Now, it is being transformed into a theme park-style tourist attraction, as the Chinese leader's past is used to legitimize Communist Party rule.
Milan has spent 20 years rehabilitating dogs and training humans to have better relationships with their pets.
I actually teach people about the simplicity behind how dogs understand us, how dogs accomplish happiness.
Some moments in life are too pure to ignore. Cesar Milan wasn't looking for a new dog.
Hi, my name is Cesar Milan, and what I do for a living is I train people how to be with their dogs.
He wasn't expecting to have his heart stolen, but that's the thing about life. It doesn't wait for you to be ready. On an ordinary day in an ordinary street, a small, hungry puppy appeared out of nowhere and started following Cesar. It seemed to just blind trust a man it had never met before. But why? Why would a stray puppy, abandoned and alone, choose to follow a complete stranger? And more importantly, why did it refuse to leave his side? What happened next will melt your heart. The city was loud, cars roared past, people shuffled in every direction, and conversations blurred into a steady hum. But in the middle of it all, there was silence. A silence that only Cesar Milan noticed. It wasn't a sound, it was a feeling, a presence. Something, or someone, was behind him. Cesar turned slightly, just enough to glance over his shoulder. And that's when he saw it. A puppy. Small, dirty, frail. It had no collar, no leash, nothing to show it belonged to someone. But that wasn't what caught Cesar's attention. It was the eyes. Big, dark, full of something that no stray should have. Hope. Cesar kept walking. He had places to be, dogs to train, but then the puppy moved. One step, then another. It wasn't running. It wasn't barking. It was just following. Cesar stopped. The puppy stopped. Cesar took a step forward. The puppy followed. This wasn't normal. Strays don't do this. They either run away, too scared to trust, or they bark, too wild to approach. But this one?
It's been identified that dogs can communicate at least 6 different emotions to us through their barks.
It had already made up its mind. It had chosen him. Cesar crouched down, his hand outstretched, palm facing down, a universal sign of peace. The puppy flinched. It wanted to come closer, but fear held it back. A long pause. Then, a single step forward. A sniff. A hesitation. Another step. It was slow, but it was real. Trust, as fragile and delicate as it was forming right in front of him. Cesar exhaled softly, watching the little creature. It was just a puppy, a tiny lost soul in a big, unforgiving world. But in that moment, it wasn't just a stray. It was his stray. And whether he planned for it or not, this puppy had already chosen its new home. Cesar knew better than to rush. A frightened dog, especially a stray, needed patience, not pressure. The puppy sat there, staring up at him, its small body tense but hopeful. Cesar slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out a tiny treat. He placed it on the ground, just a few inches away. No sudden moves, no direct eye contact, just an invitation. The puppy's nose twitched. Hunger was stronger than fear. It took a step forward, then another. Its little paws barely made a sound on the pavement. One quick sniff, and then gone. The treat disappeared in a single bite. Cesar smiled. That was progress, but trust wasn't built in a single moment. He slowly got up and started walking again, curious to see what the puppy would do next. And just like before, it followed. Not hesitantly, not out of fear. It followed as if it had already decided this was its person. Cesar led the puppy to a quieter spot, away from the busy street. If it truly wanted to stay with him, he had to test its trust. He kneeled again, and this time opened his palm, offering another small treat. Would it take it directly from his hand? The puppy hesitated. Its little ears twitched. Its dark eyes flicked between Cesar's face and his open palm. Then, with a deep breath, it stepped forward. A sniff, a pause, and then, finally, a tiny pink tongue swiped the treat from Cesar's hand. That was it. The wall between them had cracked. This wasn't just a lost puppy anymore. This was a dog learning to trust. And Cesar Milan? He was now responsible for a heart that had already chosen him. Cesar had rescued countless dogs before. He had trained the most aggressive and rehabilitated the most broken.
Cesar Milan has become famous as the dog whisperer, the man who can tame the most untrainable dogs.
But this one felt different. What was he supposed to do? He already had dogs. Plenty of them. He wasn't looking for another. And yet, when he looked at this puppy, so small, so fragile, he knew walking away wasn't an option. The puppy, as if sensing his thoughts, tilted its head. "Where are we going?" Its eyes seemed to ask. Cesar exhaled. There was only one way to find out. He reached for his phone and made a call to a friend at a nearby shelter. Maybe they could take the puppy in, give it a warm place to sleep, and find it a loving home. But as soon as Cesar stood up, the puppy reacted. It let out a small whimper. Then, it placed a single paw on his shoe. A plea. Cesar froze. He looked down at the puppy, the tiny creature that had followed him without hesitation and trusted him without reason. And in that moment, the truth was clear. This wasn't just a stray anymore. This was a dog who had already found his home. Cesar sighed, shaking his head with a knowing smile. Looks like he had just been adopted. He scooped up the tiny puppy, feeling its frail body tremble. It was too light, too hungry. Yet, as he carried it to his car, there was no struggle, no fear, just trust. Cesar set the pup on the passenger seat. It sniffed around uncertainty, then curled into a tight ball, exhausted. As he drove home, he wondered how long this little one had been alone, but the past didn't matter now. What mattered was that it was safe. At home, his pack of dogs rushed forward, sensing something new, but Cesar raised a hand. Not yet. This puppy needed time. He set up a warm bed, fresh water, and soft food. At first, it hesitated, but hunger won. Bite by bite, it ate. And then, for the first time in a long while, it slept. By morning, something had changed. Bright eyes, a tiny tail wag. Cesar smiled. It was time for a name. He watched the pup clumsily explore. Then it hit him. Lucky. Because that's exactly what this little one was. Lucky tilted his head at the sound. Cesar grinned. This was just the beginning. The real test was next. Lucky had survived alone for so long, but here, in Cesar's world, dogs lived as a pack. They worked together, learned from one another, and built unbreakable bonds. But first, they had to accept him. Cesar took Lucky outside, where his dogs waited. Big, small, old, young, each one is balanced, calm. Lucky froze. His tiny ears perked up, his tail tucked slightly. He wasn't sure. Were these friends or threats? Cesar gave him time. No rushing, no forcing. Then one of the older dogs, a gentle Labrador named Junior, took the first step. Junior sniffed Lucky, then simply sat down beside him. No barking, no aggression, just silent reassurance. And just like that, Lucky wagged his tail. A small, hesitant wag, but a wag nonetheless. The ice had been broken. Cesar watched with quiet pride. This was the moment Lucky truly belonged. Being part of a pack was one thing, learning discipline was another. Cesar knew that structure gave dogs confidence. Without it, even the friendliest stray could develop bad habits. So Lucky's first real challenge was the leash. For a dog that had spent his whole life running free, a leash could feel like a trap. Cesar held it out. No pressure, no force, just an invitation. Lucky sniffed it, backed away, sniffed again. His little mind was torn. Was this safe? Cesar remained calm. No frustration, no impatience. Then he clipped the leash on. Lucky froze. For a second, his body stiffened, his tail low, but Cesar didn't pull. He didn't rush. He just walked forward. And then something amazing happened. Lucky followed. Not out of fear, not out of resistance, but of trust. It was a simple step, but in a stray dog's world, it meant everything. The leash was progressing, but Cesar knew that trust alone wasn't enough. Stray dogs often develop behaviors to survive. Some beg for food, others steal it. Some become too attached, never wanting to be alone. Lucky was still learning the rules. One morning, as Cesar prepared breakfast, Lucky jumped up onto the counter. Instinct, hunger, old habits, but instead of scolding, Cesar corrected him the right way. A firm no, a gentle redirection, no yelling, no punishment, just clear communication. Lucky understood. The next time food was out, he sat patiently, waiting, respecting, learning. And that's when Cesar knew Lucky wasn't just surviving anymore. He was thriving. Lucky had come a long way, but there was still so much he had never seen. Cesar decided it was time to take him outside the ranch. For a stray, the world was once a place of fear. Loud cars, unfamiliar people, and constant danger. But today, Lucky would see the world through a different lens. As they walked through the neighborhood, Lucky's tail wagged cautiously. His ears twitched at every new sound, but there was no panic, no fear. Cesar led the way with confidence, and Lucky followed. When a passing car whooshed by, he tensed, but then looked up at Cesar. The unspoken message was clear. "Is this okay?" And Cesar's calm energy replied, "Yes, it is." For the first time, Lucky wasn't reacting to the world. He was experiencing it. A group of kids played nearby. One little girl spotted Lucky and ran over, her hands outstretched. Would he flinch? Would old fears return? Number Lucky sniffed her hand, wagged his tail, and leaned in. A stranger had once been a threat. Now they were just friends he hadn't met yet. Lucky wasn't just a stray anymore. He was a dog learning to love life. Cesar had a decision to make. Lucky was no longer lost. He was no longer afraid. He had a place, a family, and a future. But every dog has a purpose. And Cesar believed that Lucky's story wasn't meant to end there. One afternoon, a woman named Maria arrived at the ranch. She had heard about Lucky, a stray who had overcome his past, who had learned to trust again. Maria had lost her own dog months ago. Her house felt empty, too quiet. When she saw Lucky, she knelt down and whispered, "Hi, buddy." Lucky's tail twitched. His eyes searched hers. Slowly, Lucky took a step forward, then another. Then, with no hesitation, he nuzzled into her arms. Tears filled Maria's eyes. She looked up at Cesar, smiling. This was it. Lucky had found his home. The day had come. Lucky was leaving the ranch. Cesar watched as Maria clipped on the leash. This time, Lucky didn't freeze. He didn't hesitate. He had learned that a leash wasn't a chain. It was a connection. As they walked toward the car, Lucky stopped. He turned back. His eyes met Cesar's. No words were needed. Cesar knelt down, ruffled his fur one last time, and whispered, "You did good, buddy." Lucky wagged his tail, and just like that, he was gone. Months passed. Maria sent pictures, videos, updates. Lucky was no longer just Lucky. He had a new name, Charlie. He had a bed, a backyard, a family that adored him. He had gone from a stray in the streets to a loved companion, and all it took was a little patience, a little guidance, and a whole lot of love. Because sometimes the smallest moments, the kindest gestures, change a life forever. And Lucky? He wasn't lost anymore. He was finally home. If a simple act of kindness could change a stray puppy's life forever, imagine the difference we could all make with just a little love. Because a new find that stuns historians is rewriting everything we thought we knew about the early church. This mosaic, reportedly older than the Council of Nicaea, reveals jaw-dropping evidence of Jesus' divinity centuries before official doctrine. Excavated under a prison floor, it's said to be the biggest archaeological revelation since the Dead Sea Scrolls. Leveling doubts about early Christian beliefs, experts are calling it a game changer. And you won't believe what they found hidden in its astonishing inscriptions. Oldest Christian prayer hall found. One of the most remarkable archaeological discoveries in recent times lies beneath a maximum security prison in Israel, where experts uncovered what is believed to be the oldest known Christian prayer hall. Discovered in 2005 during a check prior to expanding the Megiddo prison, a beautiful mosaic floor was found.
More than a decade ago, an incredible relic of Christian archaeology was discovered in the most unlikely of places, beneath an Israeli prison. The prison happened to be located next to the ancient ruins of Megiddo,
featuring inscriptions that mention Jesus as divine. This remarkable finding predates the Council of Nicaea, challenging those who argue that the notion of Christ's divinity was a later invention. Instead, it provides hard proof that early Christian believers honored Jesus as God Jesus Christ, long before church councils formalized doctrine. What makes this discovery stand out is the mosaic itself, which bears 3 separate inscriptions. One important inscription mentions a woman who offered the table to God Jesus Christ, suggesting that this sacred space housed celebrations of the Eucharist. Another inscription reveals a Roman centurion who supported the local Christian group, suggesting at least some degree of acceptance from the Roman administration. By locating this ancient worship site near a bustling Roman settlement, experts can see that Christians, Jews, Samaritans, and pagans coexisted more closely than many once assumed. The mosaic floor also features the classic fish symbol, which is among the earliest images used by Christians to define their faith. Because the prison building sits on top of the site, thorough excavation has proven difficult. The Israeli Antiquities Authority initially found the mosaic, then realized they would need to shift the prison to another location for deeper study. Plans to relocate the inmates took years, but the wait gives archaeologists a chance to preserve and document the earliest known Christian prayer hall. Visitors may one day explore it themselves, seeing firsthand the clues that show a powerful devotion to Jesus in the early 3rd century. The site's location, Megiddo, biblical Armageddon, also adds to the intrigue, as prophecy places the final battle between good and evil in the same area. Although many critics once argued that early followers of Jesus had simpler views of him, the inscription God Jesus Christ leaves little doubt regarding how at least some 3rd century Christians saw their Lord. This changes the typical understanding of how and when Christian beliefs developed, since the mosaic proves that Christians called Jesus God well before the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. Far from being an invention pushed by imperial decree, the idea that Jesus was divine appears woven directly into the earliest fabric of Christian worship. In addition, the cultural mix surrounding Megiddo demonstrates that Roman officers, Jewish residents, Samaritans, and Christians often lived side by side, suggesting a more complex religious landscape than we might imagine. This means the persecution of Christians, though real at times, did not stop certain groups from worshiping openly. Ultimately, this remarkable site under Megiddo prison grants us a captivating window into how the first Christians gathered, prayed, and proclaimed Jesus as God. It stands as a precious piece of evidence that calls us to look deeper into the roots of the Christian faith. Inscription declaring Jesus as divine. The discovery of an inscription declaring Jesus as divine has sparked fascination among believers and skeptics alike.
Which means that early Christians weren't just whispering about Jesus' divinity in back alleyways. They were embedding it into their very own worship spaces.
Excavated in 2005 beneath Megiddo prison in Israel, this mosaic inscription explicitly names Jesus as God, challenging the belief that Christ's divinity was a later development imposed by church authorities. Instead, the find reveals a community of 3rd century Christians who worshipped Jesus as fully divine, centuries before the Council of Nicaea formalized Christian doctrine. Archaeologists stumbled upon this treasure when they were surveying the prison site for possible historical remains prior to a planned expansion. Beneath the existing floor, they uncovered a remarkable mosaic from an early Christian prayer hall. This site yielded 3 inscriptions, the most striking being one that singles out a woman who dedicated the table of God Jesus Christ, emphasizing the idea that these worshippers viewed Jesus as God. Another inscription refers to a Roman centurion who contributed financially to the prayer house, demonstrating, at least to some extent, the acceptance, or at minimum tolerance, of this Christian community by some in the Roman military. What makes this discovery so important is the way it upends long-standing assumptions about early Christian beliefs. Until recently, skeptics argued that Jesus was only considered fully divine centuries after his crucifixion, and primarily due to decisions reached in church councils such as Nicaea, 325 AD. However, the phrase God Jesus Christ, found in the mosaic, suggests that these beliefs were practiced and taught as early as 230 AD. Moreover, Megiddo's mixed faith environment, evidence shows Samaritans, Jews, pagan Romans, and Christians overlapping, suggests a rich context in which ideas of Christ's divinity intersected with diverse cultural influences. Further adding to this site's intrigue is its proximity to the ancient city of Megiddo, a place with deep biblical significance, long associated with fortifications, battles, and end-times prophecy, Armageddon. Though today it is a quiet area, its history is bursting with drama, from King Solomon's fortification to Roman military presence. Finding a Christian prayer hall here underscores the spiritual importance of this region. It's remarkable that this early house of worship, complete with vivid mosaics and inscriptions, remains so well preserved under a modern prison. Excavators had to work meticulously, often delayed by security protocols, to study and document the fragile remains. From a theological standpoint, the inscription declaring Jesus as divine is of particular interest. It provides material evidence that, decades before Constantine issued the Edict of Milan, and over a century before Nicaea, some Christian communities were already openly worshiping Christ as God. This fuels debate over how quickly and widely the concept of Christ's divinity spread in early Christianity. From a historical perspective, the mosaic reveals fascinating details about social and religious diversity in the Roman world. Romans, Jews, Samaritans, and early Christians could live side by side, defying the old assumption that Roman officials universally persecuted believers. Multi-faith coexistence. Multi-faith coexistence refers to different religious groups living together in harmony, even when their beliefs vary. In the case of the ancient site uncovered beneath Megiddo prison, archaeologists found traces of Christians, Jews, Samaritans, and pagans sharing common ground. This unique situation shows that these communities may have worked side by side, forging relationships based on daily life rather than issues of worship. When experts began their excavation, they were amazed to discover not just an early Christian prayer hall, but also evidence of nearby Jewish and Samaritan villages. While many assume religious groups in the past could not coexist peacefully, this site in Israel suggests something more nuanced took place. For instance, the presence of a Roman centurion who donated to the Christian community signals at least a partial acceptance of this new faith by a member of the Roman military. Rather than driving out or punishing the Christians, it appears some Roman officials tolerated, or even supported, their gatherings. Such openness challenges the image of constant religious strife in the ancient world. While clashes did occur, these findings remind us that ordinary life might have been more cooperative than we often imagine. People often needed to trade goods, access water, and secure farmland, all of which required working together. This daily reality could have fostered practical relationships, sparing groups from continuous conflict. The mosaic discovered under the prison even displays Christian symbols like the fish, which would have been easily recognized by other believers, yet it did not seem to create upheaval among non-Christian neighbors. The town's layout further underscores this shared environment. Megiddo once housed a mix of households from different faiths. Some mention Jewish synagogues, others refer to Samaritan sites, with Christian gatherings taking place in private homes. While theological debates might have existed, everyday concerns such as food, shelter, and safety could outweigh religious differences. The archaeological record here causes one to wonder how many local friendships and business connections might have formed across faith lines. Moreover, this multi-faith setting shows that persecution of some Christian groups, though real in certain periods, did not always mean total banishment or fear everywhere. Evidence from Megiddo suggests there were places where Christians felt secure enough to construct a dedicated prayer area, possibly receiving monetary help from local donors. Such support would have been impossible without some level of tolerance. Significance of the fish symbol. The humble fish symbol has played a surprisingly major role in Christian history, acting as a quiet yet powerful sign of faith. In many early Christian settings, including the ancient prayer hall discovered beneath Israel's Megiddo prison, we see fish designs that point to a vibrant community of believers. While it may appear simple, this symbol carries deep meaning, a reminder of the earliest disciples, a statement of core beliefs, and an emblem of shared identity. First, the fish symbol recalls the story of Jesus calling Peter and Andrew to leave their nets and become fishers of men. In the Gospel of Matthew, these brothers worked as fishermen along the Sea of Galilee, living ordinary lives until Jesus asked them to join his mission. The image of the fish thus came to represent both the practical side of daily work and the spiritual task of inviting others to follow Jesus. For the early church, placing a fish symbol in worship spaces showed that they viewed themselves as participants in Christ's calling, charged with spreading the good news. Second, many scholars note that the Greek word for fish, ichthys, forms an acronym for Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior. Written in Greek letters, each character stood for a name or title of Jesus, capturing the heart of Christian belief in a short and clear phrase. At a time when Christians faced varied levels of acceptance and even suspicion, this simple fish served as a way to profess faith without drawing extra attention. By carving or drawing a fish, believers could quietly unite around who they believed Jesus was, all without needing lengthy creeds or public statements. Third, as seen at the Megiddo site, the fish symbol was woven into bright mosaics, etched on walls, or drawn in hidden spots. Its presence signaled that this was a place where Christians gathered long before large churches became common. In the prayer hall below Megiddo prison, the fish design lived alongside inscriptions calling Jesus God, proving that worshippers held a high view of Christ's divinity. By combining a fish symbol with these words, they linked their faith with the message that Jesus was more than a teacher. He was viewed as Lord. Fourth, the fish symbol helped foster unity across diverse groups of believers. In Megiddo, nearby communities included Jews, Samaritans, pagans, and even Roman military officials. Despite such differences, a shared sign like the fish helped early Christians find each other and worship together. It was a universal way to express a new identity that transcended background, language, or social standing. Finally, the fish symbol stands as a testament to faith that endures through trials. Though persecution of Christians varied over centuries, there were times when openly declaring one's devotion to Jesus brought real danger. Even then, the fish endured as a sign of hope and solidarity. By quietly marking doorways, tiles, or meeting spots, believers could say, "We belong to Christ," without necessarily shouting it in places where doing so was unsafe. To this day, the fish symbol remains familiar worldwide, spotted on car bumpers, church signs, and personal jewelry, as a brief yet deeply moving confession of trust in Jesus' message. Its meaning has shifted from secret code to public display, but the heart behind it remains the same. Across centuries, from the mosaic floors of an ancient prayer hall to the modern world, the fish reminds us of calling, conviction, and community, core elements that shaped the Christian story from the very start. Challenges in excavation. Excavating an ancient site sounds thrilling, but it comes with a host of real-world hurdles. The uncovering of a Christian prayer hall beneath Israel's Megiddo prison perfectly shows how challenging it can be for archaeologists to do their work effectively. Far from a simple dig in open fields, this project forced specialists to navigate red tape, tight security, and unique logistical realities that most historical explorers never face. The first, and biggest challenge, involved the Megiddo prison itself. Being a maximum security facility, it held inmates who could not simply be relocated on a whim. Archaeologists had to secure permission from prison administrators, arrange safe routes through restricted areas, and schedule each stage of work around prison routines. Guards needed to be on high alert throughout the project, which meant everyone's movements were carefully planned. This slowed excavation because even basic tasks like moving equipment required prison clearance. Even after gaining permission to begin, researchers found their access severely limited. Excavation had to happen in brief, closely monitored intervals. Any extended digging risked shifting prison infrastructure or interfering with daily operations. Have you ever had a moment where an animal chose you? Let us know in the comments section. We hope you enjoyed watching this video. Remember to like, share it, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.